Okay, this is Ideas at Work and Beyond. The show tonight is on Richfield. Hello, Richfield. How are you doing? This is a special show because we have Scott Mason. He's just been nominated to represent the Republicans, right? To run for first selectman of Richfield.
Yes.
Okay. Well, I would like to say congratulations.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And welcome on the show.
Thank you.
Okay, we have Mr. Reed here from
Macklin Reed, Richfield Press.
Richfield Press. And of course, Mighty Heiser, who is also part of the show.
And I also brought presents. You might notice the I Love Ridgefield hats, and that's for the producer of the television show to keep for their very own.
So does that mean I have to always leave it right where it is?
Well, you might want to make it a continual recurring prop for this show besides Ridgefield. Or you can take it home and, wear it around the house when you garden, whatever you like.
Don't put them in the dryer, though, I think.
Don't put it in the dryer. Okay, let me let you ask the first question.
Okay, Scott, I thought I'd just start with the real basic thing. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about your life and how you think that prepared you to run for first selectman, and what made you want to run, and you grew up in town, you went to school, that kind of stuff.
I did that. I grew up in Boston, Massachusetts, actually. Moved to Ridgefield when I was 8 years old and have been here ever since. I love the town. I've worked in 2 town jobs in my life here at a Ridgefield news store when it used to be owned by Aldo Travellini. Squash. And I now work at Cobb's Hill Shell in Ridgefield. And I mix with the people a lot. I have conversations with them all the time about what's going on in town, just out of curious, just to know and just to have conversation with them. And the more I spoke with them, the more I would get things that they weren't real happy with in town. It seems people speak to you when you aren't in a position of power, and you have interesting conversations about what it is and what their concerns are. And I've started to realize some of their concerns have become some of my concerns. We used to have the old days in town where the people who own the local businesses, the Joe Burnettis, you will, the Jerry Ravens, Squash, Mr. Odessi, Norman Craig, who used to all meet under the town clock, and everyone used to say that that was the town, meaning that's really who ran the town, were those forefathers, if you will, for lack of a better word on my part. And I could join those conversations with them, and you learn a lot about the town and the comings and goings and the concerns. And like I said, I have some concerns that I'd like to address. I went to school in Ridgefield, grew up here. I have 4 kids. They go to all the schools, cover the gamut from elementary school to high school. My wife is a teacher in town. I've been a Board of Education member for the last 4 years, and currently in vice chair. So I started the political road, if you will, there, getting involved in something that my kids were involved in, someplace where I thought I could help, and I think I have.
Yeah, and you did a lot of stuff in the sports programs in town, am I right? You like refereeing, I think.
Yeah. I was. I actually started. I started to run the town basketball program. It was the Townies basketball travel program. I was actually the first coach in town before the RBA came in. We ran it through Parks and Rec when it was at the Yanity Gym with a guy by the name of Gene Healy, and I did that for 10 years, and then the RBA came and they formalized it, and it got bigger and better, and I moved aside. But I was a high school basketball official for 8 years, stayed involved with kids. I refed high school football for a couple years, past president of Richfield Little League. I've coached basketball in town. So I've always been involved with the
So you figure if you're president of the Little League, running the town ought to be easy. All the fights you get involved in there.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this. What has been preparing you to run Richfield?
Okay. I think the first thing is you have to have the interest. You have to want to know what's going on in town. And you can't just always read what's in the paper or hear what people say and just shake your head at it. You have to be willing to go get involved in those issues and try to come up with solutions. You can't always be a complainer. You have to be a solver. I think the Board of Education, from being secretary for a couple years down now to vice chair, has really prepared me a great deal. I think that's, to be honest with you, I think it's a harder board to be on than the Board of Selectmen. The town has, you know, department heads that really run the town. We have police chiefs and, you know, fire marshals and you know, town controllers and those things, people in charge of Paul Roach, people in charge of Parks and Rec. So they run their departments. I'm not going to get down and meddle and tell them how to do their job, because they are the professionals in those fields that know how to do their job. My job and my responsibility is just that they do their job. I think as first selectman, it's important that you keep the town together. We can't have any divisiveness that I think we have, whether it's over the schools or whether over its tax dollars or whether it's over Eureka and Bennett's Pond. And I think the division is there now, and I think it's scaring some people out of town for a variety of reasons.
Mr. Heiser?
Well, first of all, it's been a very busy night for Mr. Mason. We actually came straight here from the Republican Town Committee that met this evening, and Scott Mason was unanimously voted as our endorsed candidate. So again,
Caucus is Tuesday?
The caucus is Tuesday night at, I believe, 8 p.m. at Scotts Ridge Middle School. And I think the editorial staff and the Ridgefield Press wrote an editorial this week encouraging folks to get involved. So please come out. And I know the Democrats have a caucus as well next week. I think they're meeting in the lower conference room at Town Hall.
Yeah, at the same time.
Same time.
Town Hall, 8 o'clock
Democrats one
Tuesday.
end of town, Republicans at another end of town. That's probably, you know, the best way to do this. And I think I speak on behalf of the Republican Party that we're very encouraged by Scott Mason coming forward and being willing to be a candidate. We realize that the current first selectman is a very popular first selectman. Having run against him myself, I know we were talking a little bit about it on the way over here. It's going to be a bit of a battle, but it's a very worthy debate to have. And I think as on behalf of the Republican Party, we're just delighted that Scott is willing to step up and take on this race. And I think he has some pretty exciting ideas that he wants to talk about. The one thing that is a bit of a concern is that this next election, due to the charter revision, is a 4-year term for office. Mr. Marconi has now been in office. Well, you would know better.
8 years, I believe.
Yeah, he's 4 2-year terms, so 8 years.
Okay,
yeah.
so 8 years. So this is going to be another 4 added on. So that's going to be a 12-year tenure should he prevail this next time. That's quite a bit. I think you know, we kind of we don't have a royal form of government. We're not endorsing a king up of the town, and I think that there are many people in town that want to hear a fresh voice and a different opinion, and I think that's what Scott brings to the table.
Marty, I think it's important because it's 4 years, you know, and you're going to be able to head up the town of Ridgefield. There's no free rides. And for 4 years to let somebody run unopposed is just, in my opinion, is unthinkable. Yeah. I don't think it should happen for any office, regardless of what it is. And I know the Republican town chairman, Town Watson, and Susan Coco, the Democrat town committee, both said they wish that they had more candidates for these slates so there could be some conversation and dialogue to go before each committee has to select their members. So I think it's important, and I'm excited. I'm honored. It's actually, it's a privilege when people think enough of you to want you to run and to represent them, and I'm very honored.
Yeah, I think I was privy to some of the debates within the Republican Party when they were talking about, you know, various candidates and the pros and cons. The thing that I think people were very impressed with Scott is his knowledge of people in town. I mean, I remember shaking hands with you at different polling places. Everyone knows Scott Mason. everyone has I mean, maybe I'm overstating it, but everyone has a positive impression of Scott. He's a hardworking guy. You work with the kids, you work with youth sports, just working in town. Everybody knows this guy. That translates into votes. That translates into a positive impression. And he's worked on the Board of Ed. So he knows. I mean, when you consider we have a $110 million budget, town and school, over 70% of that is the school budget. That's where the money's spent. That's where the savings can be had. That's where, you know, the management needs to be. He's had a front row seat. He's the vice chairman of the Board of Ed, and we think that type of experience will serve him well as first selectman. So that was why he's been wholeheartedly endorsed by the Republican Party, and I assume and hope that he'll prevail at the caucus on Tuesday night at 8 o'clock at Scotts Ridge Middle School.
Come on.
Okay. Scott, you mentioned before that there were some things that you had concerns about, and I wondered, you know, what has Rudy or the Board of Selectmen done that you strongly disagree with or would have done differently?
Mac, I thought when we had our last referendum and the Board of Selectmen cut the education budget by $1 million, I obviously, as a Board of Ed member, wasn't jumping up and down with that. But what really got me upset is then when I looked on the ballot and we were voting for the budget, and there were other referendum questions on there to vote for things, and some of them needy. But I'll take the athletic field behind the skating rink, for example. I think that's a worthy thing, and I think that's a needy thing, and I think we have the kids that could use that and support that field or that facility, if you will. But to put it on when you're cutting the Board of Education budget $1 million, and then put a $1.4 million, whatever it is, on at the same time, I don't think they were really trying to keep taxes down as much as they could have. If they wanted to control the spending, then don't let all those questions go up where we spend $1 million for this, $300,000 for that pop up. At the same time, I think it was kind of, to be honest, in my opinion, it was a slap in the face a little bit to the education people when you go and you put all those other things on to the tune of, I forget what it was, 2.2 million, where all those questions added up.
You're talking about the capital item, the capital questions.
The capital questions.
Yeah.
What are some of your accomplishments as the vice president? Or the
vice chairman of the Board of Ed.
The vice chair. You know, I spoke to Dr. Ken Friesen when he left Ridgefield to become the superintendent of schools in North Salem. And when I first came on, he was very helpful with me on procedurally how to get things done and everything. And I asked him, I go, well, how do you think I did? You're on your way out now. You don't have to impress me anymore. How do you think I did? He said, I admire the way you always stuck with your heart and you did what you thought was right. You didn't always do the popular thing. And I don't think I always do the popular thing. I want to do what I think is right. It might not be what the majority is thinking at the time, but it's what I'm thinking. Now, that's not to say that you can't persuade me to change my opinion. I'm certainly listen and learn. And I can have my mind changed and altered, and I have on several occasions.
In terms of taxes, what are some of your views? Are you going to raise taxes, lower taxes, or keep it the same?
No one likes to raise taxes, but to sit here and tell you that I think we're going to have a 0% increase in the budget for the future years if I were to be elected just wouldn't be fair. And I'm not doing that, and I'm not advocating that. What I think Ridgefield has a tendency to do is there's many worthwhile projects. We need a new firehouse. The police station, just having architectural plans being drawn up for an expansion up there. That athletic field that I talked about. We have the Ridgefield Boys and Girls Club and the library, if I hadn't mentioned it, all wanting money to do projects for themselves. And I think sometimes we get involved with whatever our pet project is, if you will. And it's okay to raise taxes and do it for whatever we're involved in, but no, you can't do it for those other things. Well, they're all worthy projects. Some of them you just can't do right when we want to do them. The library is, you know, an important piece of Ridgefield. The Ridgefield Boys and Girls Club is an important piece. We obviously need to do something with the fire department and the police department and the conditions that they have faced. You can't do it all at once. Just as a society in general, we want it all now. It can't happen in town government.
Okay, we have a caller. Caller, you're in the air.
Hi, how are you? My name is George. I have a question about public housing, or low-income housing I see being built now in Ridgefield near the old high school. That combined with, bus service to and from Danbury, what can we do as Ridgefield citizens to keep the lower element from coming into our town? Oh. And I'm going to hang up and listen to your answer. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, they don't want public housing. They don't want public housing. Well, how are you going to deal with that?
Well, I think it's important to provide public housing and elderly housing, if I can just put those in the same stroke of the brush, especially for people that have lived in Ridgefield all their lives and can't afford to stay in the house that they currently live in. Maybe their spouse has passed away, or they don't have any family, and they need a place to stay, and they want to stay in a familiar area. It's not fair of them, or excuse me, fair of us, to ask them, well, just move. That house you bought for X thousands of dollars is now worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. You can make money, yeah, but now they're out of the house and they have to move out of town. So I think it's important to provide housing for those people, especially longtime Ridgefield residents that just need a smaller place, can't manage their house, but don't want to move because they don't have any contact with other relatives and want to stay in the community that they, honestly, grew up in and supported and did their blood and sweat to make happen.
Now, it's obvious that Ridgefield wants to keep Ridgefield the way it is. So how are you going to somehow negotiate with the town where you will provide low-income housing for the seniors, but at the same time maintain what Ridgefield has always been?
Well, I think we have some of that housing now that's already in place. There's Ballard Green. I believe they're building. Mac might be able to help me on this. 8 more units.
What they're building now is quote-unquote workforce housing. So that's not senior citizen housing. That would be more subsidized, younger people with families and that kind of thing. So that what the caller was talking about, that project that's going up, would be, quote, workforce housing, is what the governor was calling when she was in town. But behind that is the novitiate property,
right.
And that's mostly, there's a little bit of family housing there, but most of that is the housing for the frail elderly, the assisted living housing. Yeah.
Speaking of Ballard Green specifically,
that's senior citizens.
Yeah. I think they're adding some units up there. I think Ridgefield's in a tough spot now. We need to decide as the people, as a mass, of what we want to be. Do we want to keep it quaint little Ridgefield, which I think we can do, and keep the tax rate at what it is? And if we do that, if that's the approach that we want to take, then the taxes that people are paying for their houses is going to remain high. I don't know the exact number, but the property tax number is the top 10 in the state, I believe, Marty, a percentage that they pay, because we don't have a big commercial base. Now, Schlumberger moved out of town 6 months ago. I don't know the exact date when their last person left. There's an opportunity there to develop that commercially. There is certainly the Eureka property, which I'm sure Mac will get to, that I think that we have to develop somehow. I mean, with the Route 7 expansion, I would think commercially. And let's build the commercial base up to get the tax burden off the homeowner to the extent that it is now.
Okay, we got a call. Caller, you're in the air. May I help you?
Yes, I have a question. Well, question. I'd like to know why the Board of Education saw fit not to include $750,000 in their budget that just passed recently for computer equipment, but have brought it to the town, to the selectmen, to go into a lease purchase agreement as opposed to keeping it in their budget. That's one. Number two, why we are going to be getting another $1 million increase next year in our taxes for the bundle again, and we are going to have a revaluation, which will come due next year. How does Mr. Mason propose to help keep the taxes down if these things are done outside of budget? And what would he plan to do in the event something comes before him in that instance again?
Thank you, Carlo.
First of all, I'll address the town lease with the computers for the high school. This is actually the third time that the Board of Education has done that. The town gets a better rate than the school does on the percentage of money to borrow for their computers. I don't know the exact rate numbers, but I know they get a better one. And we have done this now. This is the third year running that we've gone that
Right.
that route. I believe.
I believe the company that leases to you doesn't have to pay taxes or something.
Correct.
If the lessee is the town, so that saves you money.
We
something
actually
like that.
save money instead of just spending money. I'm sorry, I forgot to call her second point.
She's saying that, how are you going to, basically she's saying how are you going to keep taxes down? She's concerned about the revaluation that's coming down the pike, which is kind of like almost like a hidden tax increase because people's houses are going up in value, so the percentages have to be, she's just concerned about being able to keep taxes low, as First Select.
I believe the state mandated the evaluations.
That's true.
Am I correct?
Nothing you can do about that.
Nothing I could do about it.
And although people perceive it as a tax increase, and there are individual people whose taxes may go up because their house has increased in value more than other people's houses has, it's supposed to be tax neutral.
It's true.
And there will be people whose taxes go down relative. They may not actually go down, but they won't go up as much as they would have otherwise because the other lady's house went up more.
When the tax assessor comes over and says,
It's scary.
"Good news,
Yeah.
your house is worth a lot more than the last time we took a look at it. Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Now, let me show you the math here. This is your new tax bill."
You now need.
It's a little
you need
scary,
it right there.
but
But it seems to me that Richfield, probably in the next 10 or 20 years, is going through what you call a transition. Because now what we are seeing is the high school students, the high school numbers are decreasing. So you have less students now at the high school, and in terms of they are building in a way where you will get more students every couple of years, right?
Yeah.
And now you have less students, and then you're going to have a population of senior citizens where you would have to deal with, and you have to accommodate them. So I just wanted to know, basically, how you're going to accommodate them, and are you going to bring in businesses to actually where you get the revenue to help these citizens, or are you going to let the resident of Richfield to help with the cost of accommodating these people?
First of all, the population at the high school is going up. You're correct in your assumption that the numbers are going down, but they're starting at the elementary school levels. The numbers in the elementary schools are going down now, and they're so on up to the middle school is going up. That's leveling off. I believe they have one more year for them to reach their peak. And then the high school, they had a big graduation class this year. I believe it was 439, and it's going to be high again next year, probably 460 something. So the actual population of the whole high school is going up a lot. 35 students, 45 students.
Yeah, but Ivan is right. You're both right. But Ivan's basic thrust is right, that the school population will start to decline. It hasn't hit the high school yet.
Right.
It started in kindergarten and kind of moving up. You know. Go ahead.
Yeah.
And then we have to do with the senior citizens.
We have to do something to give them a break, and I know that they get tax credit now at this senior citizen level. But again, I emphasize, it's important that they can stay in town and they can afford to live here, to be honest with you, for as long as they choose to. If we have to alleviate the tax burden that they're bearing now, we have to find some way to do that. Now, some people argue, well, you just can't draw a line in the sand and say all senior citizens. Some of them are working and, to be honest, are relatively wealthy in town and have been very successful and have worked hard all their lives, and they have the money. Maybe they can afford afford it a little bit more than the person that has their house that they've been in 50 years and their spouse has passed away and they're living on their Social Security check and they don't have anything. We really have to focus on those people and find some way to do that. Again, we have to allocate funds somehow to lessen that burden for them. You know, it's one of those things. It's the right thing to do.
It's interesting. Would you support like a graduated, means-tested kind of a tax break for seniors? That is something the selectmen have discussed, and usually the seniors oppose it. Oddly enough, you know, they say it should be for everybody. You turn 65, and everybody gets the break, and they have a what was it, $700 a
Yeah,
year?
it's like $750
a year right off your taxes. Yeah.
Yeah, they tended to, the way one group said, look, I don't want my, tax returns floating around town hall to determine whether I'm getting, the tax break or not. A lot of these people maybe aren't showing enough income, they have their money in assets, and they just don't want to have a means test. That seemed to be the prevailing
Strongly,
view.
yes.
Yeah, so.
Well, what we're gonna do is this: we're gonna take a break, and when we come back, we're gonna find out exactly what are, what is your platform, and also if you have any more questions. But
Oh, I got questions.
But before we go to break, let me ask you this: are you, do you drink Pepsi or do you drink Coke?
I'm glad you brought that up. I am a Pepsi drinker. That's my one habit that I have. I don't drink, I don't smoke, I drink Pepsi.
Now, people who are not from Richfield may not understand why I asked that question. But when we come back, we will discuss that sometime.
I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. All right, we'll take a break.
All right. Doing good?
Yeah.